frozen Ardennes forest with panthers emerging from fog. The fog that morning was more than just weather. It was a blanket, a shroud, swallowing sound and sight, turning the frozen Ardennes forest into a phantom landscape. In this eerie silence, a shape emerged, low, menacing, its long gun probing the mist. Then another, and another. They were the pinnacle of German engineering, the Panzervieh Panther, and they were hunting. Pause. This is the story of a seemingly insignificant American tank destroyer, a machine built for speed, not for a stand-up brawl. It is the story of a lone crew, isolated and outgunned, staring into the face of an armored spearhead. When 6 German Panthers attacked in the fog, this 1-inch tank destroyed them all. M18, Hellcat and crew on a wooded ridge. The date was December 19th, 1944. The location was a critical crossroads near the small Belgian town of Lanzerath. This was the 3rd day of the German offensive in the Ardennes, what would become known to history as the Battle of the Bulge. After the initial shock of the massive German assault, units of the American First Army were reeling, fighting desperate, piecemeal actions to slow the enemy's advance. Among these units was the 3rd Platoon, Company B, 803rd Tank Destroyer Battalion. Attached to the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, they were equipped with the M18 Hellcat. The Hellcat was a unique beast in the Allied arsenal. Its primary virtue was not armor. In fact, its armor was laughably thin, a maximum of 1 inch on the frontal hull, barely enough to stop heavy machine gun fire. Its virtue was speed. Powered by a massive 400 horsepower radial engine, the Hellcat could race across battlefields at up to 60 miles per hour. It was designed to shoot and scoot, using its mobility to ambush enemy armor and relocate before the enemy could return fire. Commanding one of these Hellcats was First Lieutenant James Jim L. Leach, a 22-year-old officer from Altoona, Pennsylvania. His crew was a typical mix of American boys thrown together by war. Sergeant Robert Early, the gunner, Private First Class John P. Zayak, the driver, Private Herman Statz, the assistant driver, and Private Milton Borkey, the loader. They were tired, cold, and anxious, having spent the previous days in a frantic retreat. Now, on the morning of the 19th, they were ordered to hold a defensive position on a ridge overlooking a shallow valley. Their mission was simple and terrifying: stop any German advance along this road. Little did they know that the foggy valley below them concealed Kampfgruppe Piper's spearhead, a brutal force of elite SS Panzer Grenadiers and armor, desperate to break through to the Meuse River. And heading straight for Leach's position was a company of Panthers from the 1st SS Panzer Division. Close up, inside the Hellcat's turret. Dawn on the 19th broke not with light, but with a pervasive, milky gloom. Visibility was less than 100 yards. The air was bitingly cold, and a tense silence hung over the ridge, broken only by the drip of moisture from the fir trees. Inside the hull of their M18, nicknamed Corsair, Lieutenant Leach's crew was on high alert. They could hear it, the deep-throated rumble of heavy engines, the squeak of track links, the occasional muffled shout in German. The sounds seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, amplified and distorted by the fog. At 0730 hours, the first shapes materialized from the mist. Not tanks, but infantry, a squad of German scouts probing the American lines. A burst of machine gun fire from a nearby Sherman tank sent them scattering back into the void. The contact report crackled over the radio. The enemy was here. The waiting was over. Low-angle shot revealing Panther column in the valley. By 0800, the engine noises grew louder, more distinct. Through his binoculars, Leach strained to see into the murk. Then, a gust of wind momentarily parted the fog. What he saw sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through his body. A column of at least 6 Panthers, their distinctive sloped armor and long 75mm KWK-42 guns clearly visible, was advancing single file up the road in the valley below. They were less than 600 yards away, perfectly outlined against the snow, utterly unaware of the American position on the ridge above them. Pause. This was the Hellcat's moment. This was the ambush it was built for. But the situation was fraught with peril. The M18's main weapon, the 76mm M1 gun, was effective, but against the Panther's thick frontal glacis plate, it was nearly useless at anything but point-blank range. The Panther, meanwhile, could punch through the Hellcat's paper-thin armor with ease from over a mile away. A single hit would turn the M18 into a crematorium. Leach's only advantage was surprise, the fog, and the high ground. He made a swift, critical decision. He would not engage the lead tank. He would let the column pass, allowing the following tanks to believe the route was safe. He would target the rear Panther first, trapping the entire column on the road. In a low, calm voice, he instructed his gunner, Sergeant Early, "Bob, take the last one in line. Loader, armor-piercing." Inside the cramped turret, the atmosphere was electric. The loader, Borky, slammed a 76mm AP round into the breech with a solid clang. "Up!" he yelled. Early, his eye pressed against the M76 telescopic sight, traversed the turret slightly. The crosshairs settled on the engine compartment of the rearmost Panther. He took a slow, steadying breath. The fate of the platoon, perhaps the entire crossroads, rested on the next few seconds. Hellcat fires. Rear Panther is struck. Fire! The Hellcat erupted in a deafening roar and a violent lurch. The 76mm shell streaked across the valley in a fraction of a second. A brilliant orange flash erupted from the rear Panther, followed seconds later by the sound of the impact, a sharp, metallic crunch. Almost immediately, thick, black smoke began pouring from the engine deck. The tank shuddered to a halt, its track blown off. It was a perfect kill shot. Second Panther explodes in a fireball. But the crisis had just begun. The Germans were not rookies. They were veterans of the Eastern Front. Instead of panicking, the lead Panther commander reacted with lightning speed. His turret began traversing, the long 75mm gun searching for its unseen assailant. The other 4 operational tanks between the lead and the destroyed rear vehicle began to fan out, attempting to deploy into a firing line. They were confused, blinded by the fog, but they knew the general direction of the threat. "Reload! Target the second from the rear!" Leach barked. The loader worked with frantic efficiency, the spent casing clattering to the floor. Another AP round was loaded. Early adjusted his aim. The second